Revealed, the amazing journey of a man betrayed for being poor transformed into a millionaire. The engine stuttered. Daniel squeezed the wrench tighter, sweat trickling down his brow, the familiar sense of oil and metal washing over him in the cramped garage. He had always understood machines better than people, they were predictable in their failures. But betrayal? That was a sudden wreck, shattering foundations he thought were unbreakable. Tom's laughter echoed faintly in his mind, the punchline of their friendship just a poor mechanic. A rush of anger surged within him as he recalled presenting his ideas to Tom, sharing the flickering dreams that had kept him awake through long nights of wrenching against rust. The heart of the town felt heavy on his shoulders, his mother's frail frame relying on him, and his sister Sarah's laughter ringing like a distant chime, oblivious to the weight he bore. If only he could escape the stigma of poverty, the distrust in every person's eyes that labeled him as just another mechanic. But then, a light Mr. Sullivan, the retired engineer. His gaze had held a glimmer of belief, urging Daniel with words that echoed in the silence of his garage. Did he truly have what it took to innovate? High school hadn't equipped him with the tools for academia, it felt like an impossible climb. He could picture the judgmental smiles behind the town's facade. A mechanic? Entering the field of engineering? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he wrestled with a new reality, Daniel felt the weight in his chest become unbearable. Each step toward school heightened his anxiety, the faces of his neighbors whispering doubts, who does he think he is? But the flicker of ambition kept his heart racing, the possibility hanging tantalizingly close. What if he could reclaim his invention from Tom? To prove he was not just a mechanic to despise but an innovator to remember. As grades began to turn in his favor, the bitterness around him only grew. Every moment spent at the school library brought whispers of disbelief. Look at the mechanic thinking he can play engineer, they said, burdens unending. And with each success came a fresh onslaught of fear about the family he needed to support, the fear of failing them crumbling the tiny victories he grasped. How could he honor their trust while chasing the ephemeral goal of dignity? Then there was Tom. Doubt clouded Daniel's mind as he envisioned confronting him. Would he be strong enough to face the man who twisted their past like an engine block into the wreckage? Would vengeance awaken or forgiveness guide him in this push against the tumult of expectations? With the clock ticking ever louder, Daniel found himself on the verge of a decision, the world around him a blur of possibilities. Betrayal burned sharp, but with a scientist's discipline, he had to strip it down, rebuild, and fashion something extraordinary from the debris strewn before him. Would he choose to rise, with anger or grace, the storm within him barreling toward an inevitable clash with himself and the truth of his dreams? The stakes were climbing higher, his heart racing against a wall of reflection. The moment for a gut-wrenching choice was fast approaching, and he was perilously close to crossing into unknown territory, the brave, vulnerable frontiers of his future. The familiar hum of the drill reverberated through the garage as Daniel meticulously disassembled an old engine. Each bolt that surrendered to his wrench felt like both a small victory and a resounding reminder of how much he had yet to tackle. As he replaced the oil filter, a wave of frustration surged through him. Was this all he'd ever be known for? The mechanic in a town that dismissed ambition. A glance at the clock jolted him back to urgency. He would soon head to Mr. Sullivan's workshop. In the hollow echo of the garage, Daniel felt a shiver of excitement mixed with trepidation. Mentorship from a retired engineer couldn't just be abstract wisdom, it was an opportunity to wield new tools and insights to carve out a different identity that he remembered the day they met. The aging engineer's withering smile pushed him to explore his potential. The way Mr. Sullivan had scrutinized Daniel's ideas wasn't judgment, it was a challenge, the kind he craved, yet felt utterly unworthy of. Was he ready for this? Could he absorb knowledge rich enough to transform the disappointment around him into a foundation for success? "I need to prove myself," he mumbled aloud, the mechanic-turned-student mantra reinforcing the nascent determination battling in his gut. He resisted glancing in the direction of an old toolbox, everything in him knowing that the rusted wrenches would only anchor him to his past. In the workshop, just as promised, Mr. Sullivan sat at a cluttered bench. The room smelled of sawdust, with engineering schematics strewn like battle plans over the tabletop. The once lively spirit of the engineer had dulled, visible in the slouch of his shoulders. "Daniel." Mr. Sullivan beckoned. "Today, we're designing a prototype for your vehicle cleaner. The concept you shared last week was impressive." Daniel's heart thrummed with anticipation. He stepped closer, absorbing the blueprints that painted vivid possibilities. For hours, they delved into the intricacies of the design, and with every stroke of the pencil and calculation in Daniel's head, a new world emerged from the shadows. Yet, as the afternoon wore thin, doubt crept into his mind. What if this proves too ambitious? What if I fail? "It's all riding on me," he confessed, a lump forming in his throat. Mr. Sullivan paused, leveling his gaze. "You'll never know unless you try, Daniel. Failure is merely a stepping stone, not a destination." Now sitting, surrounded by designs, the reality of his potential began to crystallize. He outlined his ideas with renewed vigor, and as the conversation flowed, it illuminated his mind. The walls of self-doubt began to crumble beneath the weight of future ambitions. But the looming specter of Tom haunted every burst of inspiration. What if his old friend came to steal this victory, too? Just when he thought he could escape the tight coils of past betrayal, the workshop's door swung open, revealing an unexpected face. Tom stood there, arrogance radiating from him like heat. The smile he wore struck like ice through Daniel's warmth. The time had come to face not just his rival, but the part of himself that feared confrontation and failed to believe in his worth. Could he confront Tom and claim his space, or would the bitterness drown the laughter of triumph he'd begun to cherish? Daniel's breath quickened, and the electrifying tension spiraled within him. Was this the moment he would either rise like a phoenix or fall back into familiar shadows, forever defined by betrayal? Daniel's breath hitched at the sight of Tom, whose smug confidence tightened around the workshop like a noose. Part of him wanted to retreat into the safety of his designs, to cling to the fragile hope blooming under Mr. Sullivan's guiding hand. He felt the internal struggle intensify, the mechanics of his mind whirring like the tools around him. Tom's gaze searched the room before landing on Daniel, a flash of recognition sparking in his eyes. "Look what the cat dragged in," he taunted, the derision laced in his voice sharper than any tool. "Still tinkering away in this old dump? Thought you'd found a better way to spend your time." It stung, not just because of Tom's words but for the realization that this encounter could shatter Daniel's newfound resolve. Panic coursed through him as he teetered on the precipice of his insecurities, each breath a plea for a way out. "Why are you here, Tom?" Daniel asked, forcing steadiness into his voice despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had to confront this. It wasn't simply about showing Tom he was still standing. It was about proving to himself that he was worthy of the aspiration stretching before him. "Thought I'd check on you, buddy," Tom smirked, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Heard you were cooking up some grand plans. Hoping to escape this town, maybe? Always dreaming, right?" In that moment, the mixture of anger and resolve solidified within Daniel. He remembered the hours spent sketching, the offerings of Mr. Sullivan's wisdom, the way the future shimmered so vividly now. "Yeah, I am dreaming. And I plan to make those dreams a reality," he stated, each word straining against the weight of his doubt. Tom's expression faltered for the briefest moment, but then he laughed, a hollow sound echoing in the workshop. "Dreams don't pay the bills, Daniel. You'll always be just a mechanic to this town. Don't kid yourself." Each word sliced at the scaffolding he had painstakingly assembled around his self-worth. For a flicker of time, Daniel felt the sharp edge of defeat press against him, threatening to push him into a corner. But then he looked around, absorbing the sketches and notes, the blueprints that promised something more. He clenched his fists and took a step forward, a small but crucial victory against Tom's condescension. "You might be right about one thing," Daniel began, voice steady now. "Dreams don't pay the bills. But hard work, creativity, and persistence do. And that's what I'm doing here, working towards something bigger than what you could ever understand." Tom's grin slipped, but he recovered quickly, folding his arms. "We'll see how far that gets you. You think you can challenge what you've always known? You're after a fairy tale." Daniel's confidence surged, fueled by the adrenaline of confrontation. This was more than just a debate with Tom, it was a declaration of his intent. He wasn't just going to exist in the shadows of the town's disdain. He would carve a place for himself, grounded in ambition and tangible results. "Whatever you say, Tom. Just remember, fairy tales sometimes come true, just not for those who wait around doing nothing," he shot back. As Tom's smirk faltered, Daniel felt the rush of empowerment swell within him, the air grew heavy with tension, a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The workshop, once merely a space for work, evolved into a crucible for growth. Daniel had not only faced Tom but had also confronted the doubts and fears lingering inside him. "Keep dreaming, Daniel," Tom said almost menacingly as he stepped back into the light of day. "I'll be watching." As the door swung shut behind Tom, Daniel turned to Mr. Sullivan, who wore a faint smile of approval. "That was well done. What you did there is significant. You've begun to stand for yourself." "Yeah, but this is only the start," Daniel admitted, glancing again at the designs before him. The weight of his thoughts swirled in a dizzying dance. There would be no easy victories, and the journey ahead would be riddled with challenges, but determination coursed through his veins. It was time to forge ahead, unperturbed by fear or past wounds. He would prove himself, not just to a rival but to the echoes of doubt that had taunted him for far too long. Now, as he settled into the rhythm of ideas and innovation, a fresh wave of resolve flooded his mind. The prototype awaited his full attention, and with each line drawn, the vision of success became clearer, yet, lurking beneath the newfound bravery was a gnawing thought: what would it take to truly break free from Tom's shadow? And as Daniel wrestled with the depth of that question, he felt a convulsion of urgency ignite within him. The next challenge loomed closer, and he could almost taste it, but would he rise to meet it, or would the shadows of his past drag him back when it mattered most? The morning light spilled through the workshop windows, illuminating the blueprints strewn across Daniel's workbench. Each sketch was a promise, a step toward worlds he had only dared to envision before. The encounter with Tom, rather than bringing him down, had ignited a fire within him. He gathered his tools, anticipation buzzing in the air like electricity as he prepared to take yet another step forward. Sullivan approached, his presence a steady anchor amidst the chaos of Daniel's thoughts. "We've got a lot to cover today," he said. "I sense a breakthrough coming. What's on your mind?" Daniel hesitated for a moment, his newfound confidence battling the shadows of self-doubt. "I want to start developing a prototype based on my designs." "But what if I fail?" he asked, the vulnerability creeping into his voice despite his efforts to remain strong. "Failure," Mr. Sullivan replied, "is simply feedback. It's an essential part of this process. You will learn and grow from every setback. The key is to not be afraid to iterate. Embrace it." The older man's eyes sparkled with conviction, and Daniel couldn't help but absorb the confidence emanating from him like warmth from the sun. He took a deep breath, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease just a bit. The looming threats of past expectations began to recede as the workshop transformed into a laboratory of potential. With each passing moment, Daniel's fear of failure transformed into a desire to experiment, to push against the limits of his creativity. The hours rolled on as he worked diligently on the prototype, the rhythmic clinking of tools becoming a soothing backdrop to his heightened focus. Designs morphed and adapted, each iteration bringing him closer to something tangible, something he could present. His mind raced with possibilities, brimming with ideas that could revolutionize the workshop and beyond. One evening, while wiping the sweat from his brow, a thought struck him. What if he sought out feedback beyond the confines of the workshop? Perhaps connecting with others who dared to push boundaries and innovate could unlock new insights? The idea kindled a newfound excitement within Daniel, expanding the confines of his own mind. His first step was to reach out to a local makerspace, a hub where like-minded creators collaborated on various projects. It was outside his comfort zone yet filled with promise. You can't stay locked away, he reminded himself. Get out there and share. Gathering a small group of engineers and tech enthusiasts felt like leaping into the unknown, and yet, for the first time, he craved that uncertainty. Weeks turned into a frenetic swirl of meetings and brainstorming sessions. Daniel's ideas started to morph through collaboration, blending with new perspectives. Each encounter pushed him further along his path, each suggestion and criticism a dusting of grit that spurred his creative drive. But then, a disheartening blow struck. During a public pitch session, Daniel presented his prototype to a panel of local investors. While the initial response was enthusiastic, one particular investor's words sent a jolt through him. It's ambitious, but it feels undercooked. Are you really the one to bring this to life? The question stung, reverberating through his mind long after the session ended. Even in the midst of encouragement, the specter of Tom's earlier taunts returned, reminding him of the fears he thought he had shaken off. A surge of insecurity crashed over him. Could he really rise to meet this test? The anger from Tom's earlier encounter battled with the self-inflicted doubts, and Daniel found himself at yet another crossroads. Would he allow himself to be shaken by one comment, or would he embrace it as a challenge to reinforce his resolve? As he steeled himself against the tide of uncertainty and disappointment, he understood that this journey was as much about the setbacks as it was about the triumphs. Each challenge was a chance to reshape his narrative, to craft a reality that was distinctly his own, yet he could sense another wave building, one that seemed to beckon him toward something even greater. What was waiting in the shadows of his ambitions that could either be his undoing or the very catalyst for his transformation? And with the looming uncertainty pressing down on him, Daniel was left to wonder, was this new ambition going to be the fortress that safeguarded him, or the battleground for his ultimate defeat? The workshop felt different now, infused not just with the scent of fresh wood shavings, but with the weight of Daniel's resolve. The air around him crackled with potential and fear intertwined, and for the first time, he was ready to confront one of his deepest fears, the fear of being inadequate. He sat at his workbench, tapping a pencil against the plans scattered before him, each sharp sound punctuating the storm brewing in his mind. After the pitch, he had spent sleepless nights reflecting on that investor's words. Is this too ambitious? He interrogated himself. What if they're right? Such doubts cast shadows over his dreams, making the ambition feel like a heavy burden rather than an exhilarating pursuit. With a newfound clarity, he knew he had to counter the doubt. Action needed to replace inaction. Gargling his way through the noise, Daniel decided that it was time for a deeper dive. Instead of retreating under the weight of criticism, he reached for the crucible of creation. The question was no longer if he would create something remarkable, but how he was going to refine what he had. Each evening after work, he methodically reviewed his prototype. He dissected every schematic, every decision made during its evolution. He would not just listen to the feedback, he would become a master of it, translating critique into actionable insight. His design would not just be a vessel for his ideas but a product imbued with validation forged through experience and feedback. It was during these late nights that Daniel experienced a personal revelation about his abilities. As he carefully crafted revisions, a sense of control surged within him. The quiet solitude of the workshop allowed room for introspection. He realized that he was not just capable of bringing his vision to life, he was a creator, inherently equipped with the skill to navigate through ambiguity, turning uncertainty into clarity. However, this epiphany didn't erase the tumult within. While he was busy crafting a more resilient prototype, remnants of Tom's derision lingered, buzzing in the back of his mind, undeterred by his growing confidence. What if all this effort leads to nothing? He whispered to himself during the quiet moments, grappling with the looming prospect of failure. determined to push forward, he decided to reapply to the same pitch event, convinced he could transform his prototype into something undeniably valid. He sought out those who could mentor him, further, design experts and local innovators who had risen from setbacks similar to his. Each interaction fortified his determination, yet in the silence of his thoughts, doubt still loomed. The meetings sparked inspiration, but they also highlighted his shortcomings. "Learning is evolving," Mr. Sullivan had said, "and evolution demands vulnerability." Embracing this sentiment, Daniel meticulously documented his process, the iterations, the setbacks, the moments of triumph. With each new revision of his prototype, he felt stronger, more committed. He dedicated himself to not just the science of creation but to understanding the art of presentation. Each line added to his blueprints represented a rejuvenated spirit, a refusal to let past insecurities dictate his journey. As the days morphed into a collage of late-night brainstorming and relentless improvement, hope began to feel less like a fleeting whisper and more like an ever-present guide. Daniel's transformation mirrored the prototype itself, built from the lessons of failures, strong in the seams of new knowledge. But then came the evening before the pitch, where anxiety manifested as a physical weight on his chest. Sitting alone in the workshop, he felt an unsettling realization: this attempt felt different. The stakes were higher, and failure felt imminent once more. Breaths grew shallow, and doubt crept back like an unwanted visitor. The path to his evolution was tested one last time. Would those hours of toil harness his fears and turn them into momentum? The moment felt more significant than before, one of transformation where he would either ascend or fall beneath the weight of his own ambitions. And as he took a breath, poised at the edge of vulnerability, Daniel confronted his final hurdle. Would he harness the energy from his insecurities to propel him forward, or would this opening chapter conclude in darkness once again? The stage was set for the next pitch, but within him, the echoes of doubt still resonated. Would he rise above, or would this journey end in silence? With the first light breaking through the workshop windows, Daniel felt time compress into the moments before the pitch. His heart raced as he gathered his materials, each component of his prototype reflecting his late nights, struggles, and rising sense of confidence. Yet, the weight of uncertainty loomed heavily, tethering him as he mentally rehearsed every word he planned to speak. He positioned his prototype, a meticulous assembly of wood, metal, and circuitry, at the center of the workbench. For a fleeting instant, he beheld it, a testament to his evolution, a visible manifestation of the fighting spirit that had risen from the ashes of self-doubt. A smile cracked on his lips, but shadows flickered behind his eyes, reminding him of the looming judgment ahead. At precise intervals, his thoughts turned inward, battling the ghosts of his former self. What if they see through me? What if they laugh as Tom did? Each question was a dagger, but he recognized the familiar discomfort. It was an opening to confront those fears, not the crippling weight they'd imposed on him before. Every breath he took was a chance to reclaim control. Arriving at the venue felt like stepping into the mouth of a beast. The lobby buzzed with energy, individuals competing for attention amidst critical eyes and whispered critiques. Daniel's foot tapped rapidly, a frantic drumbeat reflecting the chaos inside. He observed fellow entrepreneurs, their postures radiating confidence, and he found himself questioning if he belonged in the same realm, as if a nameless force stood between him and his aspirations. Yet, something inside him shifted. This was not about others, but about his journey, the conversations he had, the lessons learned, and the resilience he fostered. He was called to the stage. The lights blinded him momentarily, but they also illuminated his path. He felt an unexpected surge as he faced the audience. In that instant, he redefined his core narrative. It wasn't merely about presenting a product, it was about sharing his story of evolution from inadequacy to competence. Grasping the edges of the podium, he steadied himself, gathering the strength forged through sleepless nights in his workshop, frame by frame. "Good morning," he began, voice trembling yet firm. "Today, I'm not here to simply showcase my creation, I'm here to share a transformative journey." Each word traversed through the air, containing the weight of vulnerability he had long fought to embrace. He spoke of his late-night revisions, the searching for mentors, and the emotional road filled with setbacks. Each anecdote was a step into his psyche, an unveiling of not just professional ambition, but a personal quest for self-worth. It became more than a pitch, it turned into a dialogue with those present, inviting them to share in the lessons learned from failures turned successes. As he presented the prototype, he gestured with confidence, detailing each component and innovation design through meticulous scrutiny. The room vibed with engagement, a testament to the investment of his emotions into every crevice of the design. The echo of doubt fluttering behind him faded as he witnessed nods of approval beginning to sprinkle across the audience, yet, amidst the applause at the end of his presentation, a familiar face loomed in the back of his mind. Tom. Daniel could almost hear the sneer, the laughter rippling through it. Would he truly forge an identity away from this negative echo, or remain chained to it? As he stepped down from the stage, he felt the duality of validation and fear intensify, as if he had only scratched the surface of his potential. Then came the questions, the probing but perceptive inquiries that cut into the fabric of his resolve. Does this demand too much from the market? One investor asked. Daniel's composure shook momentarily. Would he let those words push him back, or was this a chance to clarify, to fortify his argument further? It crystallized in that moment. He had a choice to redefine not just his pitch but also his worth. As he engaged in lively discussion, a flicker of urgency seized him. Was he ready to fully embrace his capabilities? The internal battle was palpable, yet the fire within urged him to move beyond fear and into a broader vision of his journey. What if the real transformation was ahead, rather than merely at the end of this pitch? Would he seize the path unveiled, or retreat once more, softer shadows claiming his courage? The questions hung heavily in the air as he continued to speak, with echoes of doubt still lingering, but the light of possibility illuminating the darkness. Daniel took a deep breath, wondering with fervor what awaited him as he stepped deeper into his emerging identity. As the last words of his pitch reverberated in the air, Daniel absorbed the applause, but in the back of his mind, the lingering shadow of Tom pushed through the noise. He felt a pulse of exhilaration and dread, a blend of contrasting emotions that wove a tight knot in his stomach. Was this his moment to uplift himself from the past, or merely a brief echo of validation before the realities of his worth came crashing down? He mingled with the attendees, catching snippets of feedback. Investors leaned in with interest, respect lighting their eyes. Their focus pressed upon him like a warm blanket, yet Tom's vitriolic laughter pricked at the edges of his self-assurance. Suddenly, every compliment felt as fragile as glass, and he fought the urge to crumple under their scrutiny. "Great presentation, Daniel," said a voice from his side, breaking his spiral. It was Sam, an established entrepreneur he had long admired. "You really have a way of connecting your journey to the product. That's powerful." "Thank you," Daniel replied, forcing a grin. He admired Sam, yet part of him struggled to reconcile this praise with the fear of being seen as an imposter. Did he truly deserve this acknowledgement, or was he merely a charlatan pretending to rise above his origins? Sam's perceptive gaze bore into him. "You have to remember, this is just the beginning. You're not just a creator, you're part of a larger narrative. What you share can resonate with others who feel like you once did." The words hung in the air, enveloping Daniel in an aura of responsibility he hadn't anticipated. Was it possible that by embracing his story and not hiding behind it he could inspire others? The thought sparked a flame of ambition within him. But the flames were also dangerously close to his doubts, threatening to incinerate the confidence he had fought to build. With every passing moment, Daniel's resolve hardened. He had tackled vulnerabilities on that stage, and now he had to push deeper, to clarify the value he offered. As curiosity ignited in those around him, he seized the opportunity to engage intelligently, fielding questions with clarity and poise. "Is there a risk of failure?" Another investor pressed during the discussion, and for a fleeting second, Daniel's heart plummeted. Yet, he reclaimed the momentum. Every venture carries risk, but what's important is the adaptability we embrace. "I've incorporated feedback at every stage and adjusted the design. Failure isn't the end, it's simply a chapter that informs the next." His own words struck a chord. He was no longer a passive participant, he was instilling purpose into his narrative. With each interaction, doubts transformed into calculated action. He realized that this was not merely about selling a product, it was a genuine interaction that could unlock doors he never imagined possible, yet, a whisper of doubt resurfaced as he prepared to leave the event. His mind ran through every what-if scenario, each betrayal he had faced. Tom's laughter echoed in a haunting loop, intertwining with every success he had earned. Dismissal of that voice felt essential, but dismissing it altogether proved increasingly complex. Was his growth predicated on outshining his past, or was it time to confront it head-on? As he gathered his belongings and left the venue, Daniel looked back over his shoulder, half expecting to see Tom lurking in the shadows, a specter of his self-doubt waiting, ready to mock his efforts. But nobody was there, only the dim light filling the area behind him, a reminder that he had stepped beyond what he had ever been. The thrill of new possibilities gripped him, yet the question remained, how could he transform this growth into something more invaluable? And more crucially, how did he completely sever the bond with the remnants of his past? Determined to navigate this tumultuous swath of emotions and challenges, Daniel set his sights on the future, a future tied to deeper explorations of his own value and identity. What awaited him as he delved into the mechanics of his ambitions, untangling ambitions? Weaving through scars of his history? Would he finally confront his past, or would he find himself repeating cycles of doubt that had haunted him for far too long? The evening air brushed against Daniel as he stepped out of the venue, each breath drawing in a mix of coolness and clarity. There he stood, a cascade of thoughts swirling through his mind like leaves caught in a storm. Tom's derisive chuckle felt distant now, yet he could still sense its weight pressing against his consciousness. It was time to confront not just the laughter of the past, but what it meant for his present. He remembered how Tom had always dismissed his ideas, belittling his ambitions as naive dreams of someone who knew no better. Now, with a pivotal moment behind him, one thing was clear, he couldn't let that perception linger anymore. Daniel was tired of feeling like a child playing dress-up in a world that he believed was inherently out of reach. He needed to become the architect of his own narrative, one that was built on resilience, intellect, and undeniable worth. He reached for his phone and opened a blank note. With the flick of his fingers, he began to write. No longer would he craft mere reflections of his ambitions, he would document his journey, noting down each victory no matter how small. "This is my truth," he typed. "I will own it." The patterns of his future began to emerge through these words, and with them came a newfound determination to reshape his self-image. By turning his vulnerabilities into strengths, he recognized that he could invite others into his story. The flickering flame within him exploded into a blaze. What if he organized workshops to help aspiring entrepreneurs navigate their doubts, share their vulnerabilities, and emphasize that failures were simply stepping stones? The idea took form in his mind. He would become a beacon, illuminating the path for others still ensnared by their pasts. As the days went by, Daniel dove into strategic planning, creating an outline for the workshop. He invested evenings and weekends drafting a curriculum that would consist of storytelling, practical exercises, and collaborative discussions. He felt invigorated with every word he penned, each one dissolving the remnants of Tom's mockery. Yet, as he collated material for the workshop, another nagging thought crept in. His self-doubt resurfaced, wrapped around the vulnerability he was stepping into. "Am I qualified?" asked his inner critic. "What right do you have to lead?" Daniel had wrestled with that question many times before but found himself at a juncture where he needed to battle it anew. Could he speak the truth he had so passionately written? A wave of anxiety rolled in, and he knew this was the moment to dig deeper. He picked up his phone and called Sam, seeking guidance on how to launch this workshop. Could one conversation bolster his confidence to a level that eclipsed his insecurities? "Be authentic," Sam replied when Daniel explained his vision. "Your empathy will resonate with others. They'll relate more to your imperfections than your successes. Own your story." Those words ignited fresh resolve within him. Daniel spent the next few days refining the structure. He was meticulous, reminding himself that imperfection was part of reality. He called upon friends who would help him construct scenarios to roleplay common fears and challenges faced by up-and-coming entrepreneurs. The diverse perspectives enriched the workshop's content, transforming it into a living entity that echoed not just his ambitions but the collective struggles of many. As the launch day approached, Daniel found himself oscillating between excitement and trepidation. Would anyone come? Would they see the value he was trying to provide? The thoughts consumed him, threatening to overshadow the transformative potential of his endeavors. But it was imperative to silence that inner voice once and for all. Recognizing that the journey to self-acceptance required moving through discomfort, he confronted the doubts head-on. "This is not just about you, Daniel," he admonished himself as he paced the floor of his apartment. "It's about everyone you can inspire, everyone who once felt lost like you did." The day of the workshop had arrived. The buzz in his heart clashed with an echoing silence in his mind. Could he truly shed the remnants of his past in front of others? The clock ticked ominously, amplifying the tension coiling within him like a spring ready to unfurl, yet as he stood at the front of the room, surrounded by expectant faces, he felt an unexpected sense of clarity wash over him. Perhaps darkness held the key to illumination after all. The moment was here, but more importantly, so was he. What awaited him as he opened his mouth to speak? Would he seize control of his narrative or crumble under the pressure of the past? The future felt precarious, teetering on the brink of revelation, and he could only wonder, what truly anchored his worth? As Daniel stood at the front of the room, a palpable silence enveloped him, the weight of anticipation pressing against his chest. Perhaps it was the very stillness of the audience that ignited a spark within him. A flicker of determination burst forth. He was no longer merely a young man lost in doubt, he was now a guide, ready to illuminate the path for others, including himself. His throat felt dry, but he cleared it, and the first words flowed out, more confidently than he could have anticipated. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice steady. "I'm Daniel, and I'm here to share not only my journey but to learn from all of you." He studied their faces, seeking a connection. There were nods and attentive gazes, which bolstered his self-assurance. He took a deep breath and dove into the essence of his experience. "I stand here today having once felt paralyzed by self-doubt," he admitted. "I've let the voices of others, particularly those like Tom, shape who I believed I could become." As the words escaped him, he recognized the honesty in revealing his vulnerabilities and failures. They were not liabilities but assets, transformational experiences that would leverage his growth. With each story about his setbacks and the lessons they birthed, laughter erupted at the relatable anecdotes, and the atmosphere lightened. He could see it, the smiles, the shared sighs of understanding. Daniel's insecurities began to dissipate like fog before the morning sun. He had embraced his imperfections, a narrative thread that stitched together a sense of camaraderie among those present. "Today is not just about me, or my achievements," he said, invigorated by the response. "It's a space for all of us to dissect the barriers we face and co-create solutions." He transitioned into interactive exercises, asking participants to share their own hurdles, and slowly, a tapestry of stories began to weave together. They revealed not only fears and vulnerabilities but also uncharted territories of aspiration. As small groups formed to discuss strategies and ideas, Daniel moved among them, listening intently. Each interaction further solidified his sense of purpose. However, a lurking thought threatened to interrupt his clarity. Was he capable of sustaining this momentum beyond the workshop? What if these connections evaporated as quickly as they had formed? Observing a young woman sharing her struggle to secure funding for her business, Daniel's internal clock ticked with urgency. He recalled moments in his life when friends had rallied behind him, unwilling to let him retreat into despair. He could become that anchor for others. And yet, a flavor of anxiety dulled his joy. Knowing the world beyond this room was fraught with different challenges, how could he galvanize this community into action moving forward? The responsibility of the potential he was igniting weighed heavily on him, but it also felt exhilarating. "Let us take what we've shared today into a tangible action plan," he proposed, gathering the scattered energies of the room. What if we develop a support network? One that continues beyond today's workshop? The suggestion hung in the air, igniting rumors of enthusiasm and exchanging glances of excitement among attendees. As the participants began brainstorming ideas for further meetings, Daniel could not ignore the warmth of hope blossoming inside him. He had ignited a flame, now he had to ensure it was maintained. The vast unknown loomed ahead, stitched tightly with uncertainty, yet it was no longer paralyzing. The time had come to pursue something larger than himself, not merely for his validation but for anchoring other successes too. Together, we can transform our fears into action, he said, his voice rich with conviction. But beneath the excitement there lurked a shadow of doubt. How would he balance this new role with his other commitments? Could he honestly invest time and energy into empowering others while still navigating his own path? As the workshop came to a close, the mixture of exhilaration and uncertainty coiled within him like a tightly wound spring. He had opened the door to his future, but at what cost? Would he emerge a leader fortified by others' strengths or surrender to the fear of inadequacy that had so often plagued him? With those questions racing through his mind, he stepped away, pondering the intricate web of connections he had just woven. Whatever lay ahead, it was undeniable that he had set in motion a transformation, not just in himself, but in everyone who had been part of this moment. The path toward leadership was set, but what shape would it take? And then, a sudden realization hit him. The anchor he sought was not merely to uplift others, it was to establish a network of mutual growth. But deep down, he wondered, could he truly lead this charge, or would the weight of responsibility crush him under its expectations? Weeks passed in a flurry of activity where Daniel thrived in his newly formed community. It became clear that the workshop was not simply a one-off event, but a catalyst for systemic change. Members began sharing insights, forming accountability groups, and crafting plans to navigate the entrepreneurial waters they had once feared. Yet, amid this collective momentum, Daniel grappled with a vital question: how could he cultivate his leadership further while holding on to the very lessons that had shaped him? His thoughts often found him pacing in the workshop, reflecting on the intricacies of guiding others without losing sight of self. He delved into personal development literature, absorbing frameworks on leadership and emotional intelligence. With each page, he felt not only the weight of his previous limitations lifting, but also the robust groundwork laid for his evolution from self-doubt to competence. It wasn't merely the outward achievements he had craved, but a rich understanding of leadership from a place of authenticity. His neighbors started recognizing Daniel not just as the mechanic who had dreamed big, but as a mentor endowed with insight, someone who illuminated paths others were afraid to explore. Another workshop was announced, this one centered on collaboration and communal growth, fostering an exchange of resources and ideas. The excitement in the room was palpable when he unveiled the agenda, culminating in the ambitious concept of a community-wide pitch competition to showcase innovative ideas. But still, Daniel faced remnant echoes of his past. The snare of Tom's derision pulsed beneath his success, the fear that he might falter, that heavy specter of judgment, had not entirely faded. During a late-night brainstorming session, he stumbled upon a familiar thought: am I worthy of fulfilling this role? The moment provoked a decision. This was not just about him, nor a rivalry rekindled, it was about shepherding dreams into reality. In essence, leading this initiative became his avenue for conquering the past. The pitch competition evolved not merely into a showcase but a community gathering where every entrepreneur supported one another, building their dreams collaboratively. The event flourished, with attendance far exceeding expectations. As he prepared to deliver the opening remarks, those childhood fears morphed into a narrative of empowerment. In front of a diverse audience, Daniel stood center stage with a calm confidence that belied his earlier insecurities. The podium felt sturdy beneath him, much like the foundation he had forged through personal evolution. Today marks more than just a competition, he began, his voice resonant. It represents our unyielding spirit to rise, to connect, and to create without fear. His heart warmed to the applause as he realized how far he had come, not only in reclaiming his identity but in redefining what it meant to possess potential in a world steeped in skepticism. the moments that followed played out like a rich tapestry of stories intertwined. Each pitch expressed vulnerability, innovation, and an undeniable heartbeat of ambition amid the clattering of applause. As winners were announced, the recognition went beyond prizes. It was evidence of dreams being validated, aspirations igniting a spark of hope that echoed through the audience. Daniel's journey from a mechanic ridiculed for his dreams transformed into the spotlight of a leader capable of encouraging others to transcend similar barriers. He reveled in that fulfillment, the knowledge that he had cultivated a space where creativity flourished amidst support rather than judgment. In the following weeks, motivated by the strides made at the competition, he launched a venture of his own, a startup that focused on developing tools that aided aspiring mechanics like himself in navigating the business landscape. This project was more than simply a career move, it was the embodiment of the growth he had undertaken. He established a mentorship program inspired by Mr. Sullivan's guidance, guaranteeing future innovators received the support they needed, affirming their value as both creators and entrepreneurs. As he stood in the workshop, amid tools reflecting the scars of labor and design, Daniel felt the overwhelming satisfaction of knowing that he had turned bitterness into brilliance. The workshop walls echoed with laughter, brainstorming, and mutual encouragement. It was a living testament that opportunities could flourish beyond the parameters others had set. Ultimately, Daniel stood not merely as a mechanic in his small town, but as an innovator and leader, emanating competence and confidence. Embracing the past propelled him into a future filled with untold possibilities, fostering a legacy of empowerment and resilience in the world of invention and entrepreneurship. The stigma that had once haunted him was now a stepping stone, sculpting the leader he had become, rich in purpose and clarity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the workshop, Daniel smiled, having transformed self-doubt into a launchpad for others. He had accomplished what he once deemed impossible. Not only had he conquered his past, but he was also writing a narrative that others could craft themselves, echoing through this community and beyond. And just as he felt the gravity of his transformation settling into place, a resolute thought emerged: this was only the beginning. Turning to the camera for the closing shot, Daniel's voice echoed with conviction, urging all to engage with the journey of self-discovery, resilience, and mentorship he had embraced. "You need to subscribe now," he declared, a fierce passion igniting the words. "This is the moment to show your support for stories of personal growth and transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, to reach those who need to see that overcoming obstacles is possible. Comment your reactions and theories about what this journey means to you and how it resonates with your own stories. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, and remember, together, we can empower one another to turn dreams into realities." Don't wait even one more second to engage. Every word dripped with urgency and sincerity, a call to action woven deep within the tapestry of growth he had embraced. And as the screen faded to black, an unbreakable bond was forged, a connection between a dreamer and a network ready to conquer the world.